The pulse beneath the silence. There are patterns, hidden beneath the ruins of time, not written in stone but carved into the bones of the earth itself, in the scars of glaciers, in the ash layers of forgotten volcanoes, and in the sediment that whispers of oceans that once devoured the continents. For centuries, we've seen our planet as a cradle, alive yet constant. But what if that's an illusion? What if beneath our feet beats an ancient clock, one that measures not years or centuries but epochs, and resets the world when its cycle completes? Across the ages, humanity has survived more than just wars or plagues. We've endured resets so vast that they wiped clean entire chapters of existence. Geologists call them catastrophic events. The ancients called them the Great Purifications. And myths across every culture, from the Popol Vuh of the Maya to the flood of Utnapishtim in Sumer and the Ragnarok of the Norse, speak of the same pattern: destruction followed by rebirth. Coincidence or memory? Modern science tells us that Earth's history is punctuated by cataclysms, massive extinctions, rapid shifts in climate, and sudden tilts in its axis. But a few renegade researchers, geophysicists, and mythographers whisper of something more, that these events are not random, that they occur in cycles, measurable, predictable, and terrifyingly precise. Some call it the Earth cataclysm cycle, a recurring rhythm that pulses through geological and cosmic time. Every 12,000 to 13,000 years, something happens. Ice melts, oceans rise, continents quake, civilizations vanish, and the survivors scattered across the globe leave behind myths of fire and water, myths that echo the memory of worlds before ours. But if this clock is real, what sets it in motion? Is it the heartbeat of the planet itself, a geophysical pulse deep within the core? Or is it cosmic, triggered by cycles of the sun, magnetic reversals, or encounters with invisible streams of energy moving through the galaxy? To find the answer, we must look not at what humanity remembers, but at what the Earth itself records. And like a patient archaeologist peeling away the layers of time, we begin with the strata, those silent witnesses of disaster. Because hidden within the rocks are signatures, sudden spikes in platinum and iridium, the fingerprints of cosmic impacts, thin black layers rich with soot and nanodiamonds, evidence of fires that once swept entire hemispheres, and at the boundary of epochs, abrupt shifts in magnetic polarity, suggesting a world turned upside down. These aren't isolated incidents. They align. Every time the planet resets, it follows the same pattern: destruction, chaos, renewal. It is as if the Earth itself keeps time, and every few millennia it strikes midnight. But what if we're approaching that hour once again? What if the tremors we feel, the changing skies we observe, and the magnetic drift accelerating beneath our compasses are not random signs, but the ticking of that forgotten clock? Because if history teaches us anything, it's that the past is never really gone. It waits, buried beneath the silence, pulsing beneath our feet. But to hear the rhythm of this ancient clock, we must go back, far beyond recorded history, back to the first time the world ended, the first reset, when ice and fire collided. They called it the Younger Dryas, but the name does little justice to the terror it unleashed. Around 12,800 years ago, the Earth changed in a single generation. The world had just emerged from the Ice Age. Glaciers were retreating, rivers swelling, and early humans were beginning to sow the seeds of civilization. Then, something happened. Almost overnight, temperatures plummeted. The warmth vanished, replaced by a deep freeze that gripped the planet for nearly 1,000 years. Forests withered, mammoths and giant sloths vanished, sea levels halted, and in some regions even reversed. And for the first time, humanity witnessed the true power of the planet's reset cycle. For centuries, scientists struggled to explain this sudden cold snap. Some blamed volcanic eruptions, others a collapse of ocean currents. But in the last few decades, evidence has begun to point toward something far more extraordinary and far more devastating. Across North America, a mysterious black layer of soil, rich in soot, nanodiamonds, and microscopic spherules, lies buried beneath the earth. It appears exactly at the boundary of the Younger Dryas onset. Geologists call it the Younger Dryas boundary layer. To myth, it's the moment when the sky burned. This thin line of darkness tells a violent story of something that came from above. Tiny glass beads formed by unimaginable heat, magnetic grains fused by impact, traces of platinum, the same rare metal found in meteorites. To some researchers, this is the smoking gun of a cosmic impact, possibly a fragmented comet that exploded over the northern ice sheets. The shock waves would have melted miles of glacier in seconds, releasing torrents of fresh water into the oceans, disrupting global currents and plunging the planet into chaos. But what's most unsettling is that this event wasn't unique. It fits the rhythm, a pulse, one that seems to strike Earth roughly every 12,000 years. Ancient stories preserve the memory of that fire. The North American tribes speak of a rain of molten stones that set forests ablaze. The Egyptians remembered a time when the sky fell and the Nile ran red. And in the oldest Sumerian fragments, long before Gilgamesh, there is mention of the day the stars fell and the earth froze. To myth, these were metaphors. To geology, they were data. But to those who look deeper, they are coordinates in time. The Younger Dryas wasn't just a natural catastrophe. It was a reset, the kind that leaves behind silence. In that silence, civilizations that may have existed before agriculture could have vanished entirely, leaving behind only fragments, impossible artifacts, megalithic ruins, and oral traditions that spoke of gods descending from the heavens after a great flood. Sites like Göbekli Tepe in modern-day Turkey rise like tombstones of a forgotten age. Carbon dating places their construction immediately after the Younger Dryas, as if they were built by survivors. Hunter-gatherers, we are told, could not have carved and aligned megaliths with astronomical precision. Yet there they stand, as if to remember the sky that once burned. Could it be that humanity had already reached a level of sophistication before that cataclysm? That the ice and fire reset, erased a chapter of our story, one that our ancestors tried to rewrite in stone before it vanished again? And if this event truly marked the last full cycle, then by the measure of that same cosmic clock, we may be approaching its next hour. Because geological evidence suggests that these pulses, whether triggered by cosmic debris, magnetic reversals, or internal planetary rhythms, occur with astonishing regularity. Roughly every 12,000 to 13,000 years, the planet flares into chaos, only to fall back into calm. The Younger Dryas was only the last known reset, but before it, there were others. Deep time holds their shadows, mass extinctions, abrupt magnetic flips, and the silent disappearance of ecosystems. The Earth remembers, even when we do not, and somewhere in that memory lies a pattern, one that refuses to be ignored. But to understand the cycle, we must step further back, beyond the Ice Age, beyond humanity, to the time when Earth's very skin moved, and continents themselves broke apart as if torn by invisible hands. The planet that shifts its skin. There are moments in Earth's history when the planet itself seems to convulse, as if trying to tear free from something unseen. Whole continents shudder, seas empty and rise, and mountains erupt where plains once stood. Science calls these changes tectonic drift, a slow dance of plates over eons. But some believe there are times when this movement is not slow at all, when the crust of the Earth slips suddenly, like the shifting skin of a restless giant. It's a theory long buried under controversy, yet impossible to ignore. The Earth crust displacement hypothesis. In the mid-20th century, a scholar named Charles Hapgood dared to propose it. He suggested that the entire outer shell of the planet, the lithosphere, could move as one piece over the softer molten layer beneath, the asthenosphere, not in millimeters per year, but in thousands of miles within days or weeks. To many, it sounded like science fiction. Even Albert Einstein, cautious as ever, wrote in support of Hapgood's reasoning, calling it not impossible and urging further study, because the evidence, scattered across the globe, whispered something strange. In Antarctica, Beneath miles of ice, radar mapping revealed ancient riverbeds and mountain ranges that looked as though they once stood in temperate latitudes. Fossilized plants and pollen hinted that the frozen continent was once green. Yet no gradual drift could explain how such lush life had turned to eternal ice so quickly. And then there were the maps. Centuries before satellites, the Piri Reis map, drawn in 1513 from much older sources, depicted the coastline of Antarctica without its ice cover, drawn with near-perfect accuracy. How could ancient mapmakers have seen what modern eyes could not, unless the continent had once lain further north, before the crust itself had shifted? If Hapgood was right, then the last crustal displacement might have been the true engine behind the Younger Dryas cataclysm, not merely a comet, but the planet's own outer shell sliding across its molten core. The result? Earthquakes beyond imagination, tidal waves thousands of feet high, continents drowning and re-emerging like islands in a storm. Myths from every corner of the world seem to echo this violent rearrangement. The Hopi speak of worlds turned over. The Chinese myth of Nuwa tells of a sky that collapsed, forcing the goddess to rebuild the world. And Plato, in his tale of Atlantis, described an advanced civilization swallowed in a single day and night of misfortune. Could those words be more literal than symbolic? In Hapgood's model, the pole positions themselves could shift, moving Antarctica to its frozen destiny while pushing other regions toward warmer latitudes. If true, entire climates would transform instantly. Species would vanish, seas would roar across continents, and humanity, if it existed in any organized form, would be reduced to legend. And here lies the haunting beauty of the idea. It matches the rhythm. Because if these displacements occur cyclically, driven by imbalances in the planet's rotation, magnetic field instabilities, or even external gravitational forces, then the cataclysms of fire, flood, and ice are not separate tragedies. They are chapters of one repeating story. The Earth is not stable. It breathes, shifts, resets, and each reset erases the traces of the world before it, leaving us to rediscover our own beginnings again and again. Modern geophysics largely abandoned Hapgood's hypothesis, favoring slow plate tectonics. Yet, new evidence keeps surfacing. Magnetized rocks that suggest rapid pole migration, ice core anomalies indicating sudden temperature swings, satellite data hinting at accelerating crustal stress near the equator. It's as though the planet is preparing for something. The pulse is returning. And if the Earth truly shifts its skin, we won't see continents drift over millennia. We'll watch them rearrange themselves in our lifetime. But what mechanism could trigger such a global movement? What invisible hand could make the Earth's shell slip? To answer that, we must look to the sky, for perhaps the planet does not act alone. Perhaps it dances to the rhythm of something far greater, a cosmic force that returns with the precision of an ancient clock, the solar trigger. If Earth keeps time through destruction and rebirth, then perhaps the hand that turns its clock is not beneath us, but above. In the silence of space, our sun, that radiant giver of life, hides a second face, one of fire, fury, and forgetfulness. For every civilization that ever gazed upward, the sun was both God and destroyer. The Egyptians called him Ra, the eye that sees all. The Aztecs called him Tonatiuh, the devourer who demanded blood to keep burning. And in the oldest Vedic hymns, he is Surya, the radiant wheel whose turning marks the ages of man. Across every culture, the sun is not constant. It is cyclical, awakening in wrath before falling silent again. Modern science, cautious as ever, recognizes this pattern in the form of solar cycles. Approximately every 11 years, the sun's magnetic field flips, its spots multiply, and its storms intensify. But hidden beyond this familiar rhythm lies something older and infinitely more dangerous. A solar cataclysm cycle, repeating roughly every 12,000 years, that may coincide perfectly with the Earth's own resets. In recent decades, physicists have discovered evidence that the sun can undergo sudden, violent outbursts called micronovae, brief but devastating explosions that eject massive plasma bursts across the solar system. Unlike the slow flares we observe today, a micronova would unleash energy 1,000 times greater, enough to scorch the atmosphere, ignite global fires, and vaporize entire oceans in the blink of an eye. At first, this seemed speculative, the stuff of cosmic nightmares. But then came the signatures, fused glass found across desert regions like the Sahara and the Atacama, areas once subjected to unimaginable heat. Microscopic evidence of vitrified sand, as if the surface of the Earth had been flash-melted. And at the same time, intervals that mark the geologic resets. Coincidence? Or a countdown? In ice cores taken from Greenland and Antarctica, scientists found abrupt spikes in beryllium-10 and carbon-14, isotopes produced when the atmosphere is bombarded by intense solar radiation. Those spikes align precisely with known periods of abrupt climate catastrophe. Each one whispers the same warning. The sun flared. Imagine it. A solar storm so immense it tears through the magnetosphere, electrifies the oceans, and ignites the skies. A global aurora, brighter than day, followed by silence. The fields of magnetism that shield us collapse. Compasses spin, birds lose their way, and the surface of the planet is bathed in invisible fire. Then come the quakes, the floods, the madness of the elements. The ancients remembered this, though they lacked the words for micronova or plasma discharge. They spoke instead of the day when the sun stood still, or the sky fire that devoured the world. In the Popol Vuh, it is said that the first men were turned to stone when the sun grew angry. In Egyptian texts, the god Ra sends the Eye of Hathor to cleanse a world burnt by its own reflection. And in the Zoroastrian Avesta, the end of each world age begins with the melting of metals and the raining of fire. Different tongues, same memory. If the sun truly undergoes cyclical eruptions, releasing plasma clouds that reach Earth, then the pattern of 12,000-year resets begins to make sense. Each burst would disrupt the planet's magnetic field, destabilize the crust, and unleash floods of melting ice and rising seas. The last one could have struck at the onset of the Younger Dryas. And if the clock is steady, the next might already be overdue. The most chilling evidence comes from within the sun itself. Astronomers have noticed strange anomalies, sudden symmetrical waves of magnetic inversion sweeping across its poles faster than expected. And deep space observatories record that our entire solar system is entering a region of the galaxy dense with interstellar plasma, a cosmic environment that could trigger increased solar volatility. It's as though the sun is winding up again, preparing for another pulse. What if the ancients knew? What if their myths of gods battling dragons, of serpents swallowing the sun, were metaphors for these periodic cosmic storms? What if they weren't worshipping the sun, but fearing its return to wrath? For the Earth's forgotten clock may not be of stone or magnetism, but of light. And the mechanism that resets our planet might not rise from its core, but blaze from its star. But the sun is not alone in this story, because even as it burns, another force pulls at the rhythm, silent, massive, and invisible. The clock has more than one gear, and the next one lies in the dark. The invisible hand, magnetic reversals, and planetary chaos. Every compass on Earth points north, but north is not where it used to be. Over the last century, the magnetic North Pole has been racing across the Arctic, drifting from Canada towards Siberia at an accelerating pace. At first, scientists dismissed it as a harmless fluctuation. Now they're not so sure, because what happens when that movement doesn't stop? What if one day the poles switch places, north becoming south, and the planet's magnetic field collapsing in the process? This isn't science fiction. It's magnetic reversal, a phenomenon written deep in the rock of the Earth's crust. Every few 100,000 years, the planet's magnetic poles flip completely, leaving behind layers of lava magnetized in opposite directions. The record is clear. It has happened many times before. But in recent decades, something strange has begun. The field isn't just drifting, it's weakening rapidly. Satellites detect vast regions like the South Atlantic anomaly, where the magnetic shield thins dangerously. Cosmic radiation penetrates deeper, disrupting electronics, altering atmospheric chemistry, and even changing the rate at which DNA mutates. To some researchers, it's the first sign that the next reversal has already begun. But here's the unnerving part. Every major magnetic flip in Earth's past aligns eerily close with global catastrophes, mass extinctions, sudden climate shifts, and abrupt geologic upheavals. It's as if, when the field collapses, chaos reigns. Why? Because the magnetic field is more than just a compass guide. It is the invisible armor of the planet. It shields us from the solar wind, deflects cosmic rays, and stabilizes the delicate electrical balance of the biosphere. When that shield falters, the sun's wrath hits directly. Charged particles strip away ozone, ignite atmospheric currents, and trigger violent storms in the ionosphere. The sky itself becomes a weapon. And perhaps that is the true mechanism behind the Earth's recurring cataclysms. Imagine a moment when the magnetic field weakens to a whisper. Then a solar micronova erupts, plasma racing across space at millions of miles per hour. With no strong magnetic shield to deflect it, the energy slams into the atmosphere, collapsing power grids, burning skies, and inducing currents through oceans and crust alike. Massive electromagnetic surges could literally melt rock, ignite global fires, and destabilize tectonic plates. The crust trembles, the poles shift, the oceans rise. To those who lived through it, it would seem like the end of the world. And maybe it was, again and again. Ancient traditions speak of this invisible force. The Egyptians called it the breath of Atum, the unseen current that holds the heavens apart. The Navajo legends tell of the changing winds of the world, when the earth's power would turn inside out. In the Sanskrit Mahabharata, it is written that the sky cracked open and the directions lost their way. Each of these may be a cultural memory of magnetic upheaval, the very moment the compass of reality itself failed. And now, scientists measure the same instability. The field's strength has dropped nearly 10% in just 2 centuries, an instant in geologic time. Beneath South America and the Atlantic, magnetic flux lines are fracturing. The Earth's core, once stable, appears to be rotating at a slightly different rate than the mantle above it, a subtle twist that may be the first movement before a flip. If the cycle of cataclysms is real, this could be one of its critical stages, the magnetic prelude, a warning that the next global reset approaches. And once again, the rhythm returns. Every 12,000 to 13,000 years, the same conditions repeat. A weakening field, a volatile sun, earthquakes, floods, and fire. Each time, life barely survives and begins again. So, what if we're living in the last calm moments before the next reversal? What if the strange auroras now seen at lower latitudes, the unexplained satellite malfunctions, the growing seismic volatility are all symptoms of the clock ticking toward zero? If the invisible hand truly governs the fate of worlds, then humanity may already be standing inside the gears of that cosmic clock. And the next movement will not be gentle. But before the field collapses, there are signs, subtle, ancient markers left by those who may have seen it happen before. If we can read their warnings, perhaps we can glimpse how many times this clock has already struck midnight. The ancients who knew, monuments as warnings. When the world ends, stories die first, but stone remembers. Across every continent, from the high plateaus of South America to the deserts of Egypt, stand monuments so ancient, so deliberate, that they seem less like temples and more like warnings. To the mainstream archaeologist, they are symbols of devotion or power. But to the few who dare to look deeper, to read them not as structures, but as messages, a different picture emerges, a planet-wide attempt to record what happened last time. Take Giza, for instance. The Great Pyramid is aligned with true north to within 1/15th of a degree. Precision so extreme that modern engineers still debate how it was achieved with primitive tools. But beyond engineering brilliance, there is something far more intriguing. The pyramid's orientation corresponds to a sky that existed not in the time of the pharaohs, but nearly 12,500 years ago, the very threshold of the Younger Dryas cataclysm. Was it built to honor gods, or to remember a world destroyed by them? Inside its chambers, the geometry speaks in ratios that mirror the dimensions of the Earth, the curvature, the equatorial radius, even the time it takes for our planet to complete one precession of the equinoxes, 25,120 years, or precisely 2 cycles of cataclysm. It's as if the structure itself encodes a calendar of destruction. Half a world away, on the windswept plains of Turkey, stands Göbekli Tepe, older than Stonehenge, older than agriculture, built by people who were supposed to be hunter-gatherers. Yet its pillars align with constellations, particularly Orion and Sirius, the same stars revered by the ancient Egyptians. Archaeologists were stunned to find that one carving depicts a shower of meteors, the very symbol of a cosmic impact, dated to around 10,900 BCE, the onset of the Younger Dryas. Coincidence? Or a survivor's memory carved in stone? Further south in Bolivia, the ruins of Tiwanaku and Pumapunku reveal precision-cut stones weighing hundreds of tons, fitted together as if by machine. Many of these align with the sun at solstices, but not today's solstices. Their orientations make sense only if Earth's axis once tilted differently, perhaps before a crustal shift. Were these sites once at another latitude before the planet moved its skin? And then there's the Sphinx, eternally facing east, greeting the dawn. Its body is eroded not by desert wind, but by heavy rainfall that hasn't touched the Giza Plateau for more than 9,000 years. The stone tells a different story than history allows, a story of floods, a story of survival. What if all these monuments are not the works of disconnected cultures, but remnants of a single global knowledge, passed down through the ruins of a vanished world? Many myths echo this idea. The Egyptians spoke of Zep Tepi, the first time, when gods walked among men after the Great Flood. The Maya described previous suns, each destroyed by fire, water, or wind. The Hopi elders tell of 4 worlds, each ending in cataclysm, each followed by rebirth. Even Plato, in Timaeus, recounts an Egyptian priest telling Solon, "You Greeks are children. You remember but one flood, though many have come before." Could these worlds simply mark cycles of the same catastrophe? If so, the ancients may not have worshipped the heavens. They were warning us about them. Consider this. Many ancient temples are aligned not only to the sun or stars, but to magnetic north, even though compasses did not exist. If their builders tracked the sky and the field, perhaps they noticed that both changed, that every so often the stars shifted and compasses, or their precursors, went mad. Perhaps they marked the last time the magnetic poles reversed, hoping future generations would recognize the signs before it happened again. The pattern is unmistakable. Alignments that no longer match the heavens. Myths that describe fire from the sky, floods from the deep, and darkness at noon, all separated by approximately the same interval, 12,000 years. Maybe these are not just temples. Maybe they're time capsules, the memory banks of a species that refuses to forget entirely. And if that's true, then we are not the first civilization to stand at the edge of the clock's next strike. But stone is not the only witness. Beneath the soil, in the frozen depths and sediment cores, lies the planet's own archive, and its record is far more unforgiving. The geological testimony. When the Earth spoke in fire, long before history, before words or monuments, the Earth itself began to write, not with ink or stone chisels, but with pressure, heat, and silence. Each layer of sediment became a page, each ash deposit a punctuation mark in the story of life and death. It is here, in these quiet strata, that the planet keeps its most honest memories. To the geologist, these layers are data. To the storyteller, they are prophecy. And when you look closely, you begin to see the pulse. Every few thousand years, the rhythm repeats. Thin bands of black ash, spikes in rare isotopes, abrupt changes in chemistry. Each one whispers the same refrain: something extraordinary happened. Something that burned, drowned, and froze the Earth all at once. Let's open the record. In the ice cores of Greenland, trapped air bubbles tell of sudden, violent climate shifts, swings of 10 to 15 degrees Celsius in less than a decade. Scientists once believed such changes took millennia. Now they know they can happen in the span of a single human lifetime. At roughly 12,800 years ago, the Younger Dryas event marks one of these moments. But deeper down, older layers show similar spikes at 24,000, 36,000, and 48,000 years ago. Each interval, about 12,000 years. The heartbeat of cataclysm. In these same layers lie traces of platinum and iridium, elements rare on Earth but common in cosmic debris. Some layers contain nanodiamonds, formed only under intense heat and pressure, the kind produced by meteor impacts or solar plasma storms. Still others show soot-rich black mats, evidence of global fires that raged across continents. Whatever caused them wasn't local, it was planetary. Move further down, into the geologic strata of ancient seabeds, and the story grows darker. Thin boundaries of clay, rich in shocked quartz and molten glass, separate whole ages. Each boundary marks a mass extinction: the Permian, the Triassic, the Cretaceous. Different eras, same mechanism. Sudden devastation followed by slow recovery. Even the great die-off of the dinosaurs, 66 million years ago, carries echoes of the same pattern. Some scientists now propose that these cataclysms come not from random chaos, but from a cyclic driver, perhaps the Earth's orbit through regions of higher cosmic dust, or its oscillation through the galactic plane, where radiation spikes every 12,000 years. It's as if our solar system passes periodically through invisible storms, celestial tempests that ignite both the sun and the planet itself. But the geological record doesn't only show destruction, it shows resets. Each layer of death is followed by one of renewal. New species, new climates, new beginnings. It's almost as if the planet breathes through catastrophe, exhaling civilizations and inhaling silence. And yet there's something unsettling in the most recent layers. The current epoch, the Holocene, has lasted just over 11,700 years, shorter than the interval between previous cycles. If the pattern holds, the next pulse could come any time now. Across the Pacific, volcanic cores show synchronized eruptions timed with each magnetic reversal. Massive supervolcanoes, like Toba in Indonesia and Yellowstone in North America, appear to awaken in these same intervals, as if the shifting magnetic field and the planet's molten core are somehow linked. Even ocean sediment reveals abrupt shifts in salinity and current flow, the fingerprints of sudden floods, likely from melting ice after rapid solar heating. In every data set, ice, rock, ash, or fossil, the rhythm returns. The clock ticks. The intervals match. The Earth, it seems, has its own metronome, set by cosmic conditions we barely understand. But here lies the haunting truth. The planet doesn't just record the past, it remembers. And that memory may manifest in ways we can still feel, through instincts, through myths, through the unease that something vast once happened and might happen again. When the ancients spoke of cycles of destruction, they weren't inventing them. They were translating the language of the earth into the language of man. And if the earth speaks in fire, ice, and flood, then perhaps even now it's beginning to whisper again. But what if the rhythm is not merely geological or cosmic? What if something or someone designed it that way, To understand that possibility, we must venture beyond science, into the domain of myth and memory, where gods were not metaphors, but witnesses, the architects of time, God's watchers and the engineers of cataclysm. If the Earth's clock is real, if these cataclysms repeat with precision, then we must ask the forbidden question: who built the clock? For thousands of years, humanity has told stories of beings who came from the heavens, not spirits, but teachers. They arrived after the great floods, when fire had scorched the land and ice still gripped the mountains. They taught us to measure the stars, to build in stone, to remember through myth. The Sumerians called them the Anunnaki, those who from heaven to earth came. The Egyptians knew them as the Neteru, divine architects who restored order after chaos. The Greeks remembered them as the Titans, punished for giving man forbidden knowledge. Different names, same story. Every myth begins the same way: a world destroyed, followed by the arrival of beings who carry memory and mathematics. They bring calendars, alignments, and celestial warnings. They speak of cycles, ages of the sun, worlds of fire and water, wheels within wheels. It is almost as if they were trying to teach survivors how to count the years until the next reset. In Mesopotamia, the god Enki instructs a mortal named Ziusudra to build a vessel before the flood. In Mesoamerica, the god Quetzalcoatl emerges after the son of fire to rebuild humanity. In the Andes, Viracocha walks across the flooded world, reteaching the survivors how to live. And in Egypt, Thoth, the divine scribe, records the measurements of heaven, as if preserving lost knowledge from a vanished age. Could all these gods have been survivors or descendants of a civilization that understood the cataclysmic cycle? A civilization erased by the last reset, yet determined to prevent humanity from forgetting the next one? The monuments we explored, Giza, Göbekli Tepe, Tiwanaku, might not have been built to worship them, but by them or in their memory. Their alignments with precessional cycles, their mathematical precision, their inexplicable age, all point to knowledge beyond the capacity of scattered post-cataclysmic tribes. Knowledge that appears inherited, and if that knowledge truly came from before the flood, before the Younger Dryas, then humanity's story may stretch back tens of thousands of years further than we dare imagine. The myth of Atlantis, told by Plato, fits perfectly into this pattern. He wrote that the island empire fell in a single day and night of misfortune, around 9600 BCE, the same moment when ice melted, oceans rose, and the world burned. The survivors, he said, scattered and seeded the beginnings of later civilizations. Perhaps these were the very watchers, the architects of time, beings who remembered the last fall of the clock. But what if they weren't gods at all? What if they were human, but human from another age? An age advanced enough to map the heavens, harness magnetic fields, and understand the rhythms of solar cycles. A world destroyed by its own knowledge, yet determined to leave behind the blueprint of the cycle that ended it. Modern researchers have noticed strange anomalies that seem to support this possibility. In ancient sites across the globe, massive stone blocks show signs of vitrification, their surfaces melted as if by intense heat, possibly plasma discharge. Others contain geometric codes based on the same constants that govern orbital mechanics, as if someone once possessed a unified understanding of cosmic energy and then lost it in fire. If the architects of time existed, they may have encoded their warning not just in stone, but in mythic allegory, disguising science as story. The fire of the gods may have been solar radiation. The serpent in the sky may have described the magnetic field winding around the earth. And the return of the sun god, the next cycle of cataclysm. Maybe they weren't trying to be worshipped. Maybe they were trying to be remembered. The deeper question is why? If these beings knew the cycle, could they have stopped it? Or were they merely witnesses, bound to the same cosmic rhythm as us? Perhaps that is the cruel poetry of it, that even the architects of time could not escape the clock they understood, and yet their warnings endure. in temples, myths, and numbers. They wanted someone to listen when the signs appeared again. And those signs are appearing now. But before we face the future, we must finish deciphering their code, because scattered among those ancient ruins are not only warnings, but instructions, blueprints of the gods, codes, alignments, and the precession secret. Every sunrise looks the same, yet over thousands of years, the sun rises in a slightly different place on the horizon. To the casual eye, it's invisible, but to the ancient astronomers, it was everything, because that slow drift of the heavens hides the key to the Earth's forgotten clock. They called it the precession of the equinoxes, the silent wobble of the planet's axis as it traces a vast circle through the sky every 25,120 years. Modern science measures this motion precisely, but what most people don't realize is that the ancients knew it too. Not by telescopes, but by patience. By watching the stars for generations, they discovered that every 2,160 years, the sun rose in a new constellation at the spring equinox. Thus, the ages were born: Aries, Pisces, Aquarius, the great cosmic calendar of time itself. Across civilizations, this number, 25,920, appears like a haunting refrain, woven into architecture, myth, and measure. To the Egyptians, it was encoded in the Great Pyramid, whose base perimeter divided by its height yields 2p, the ratio of a perfect circle. To the Maya, it was the heart of their long count calendar, where great cycles ended and new worlds began. To the Hindus, it was the Maha Yuga, the great age of the gods, all describing the same cycle, all pointing to the same truth. The heavens move in rhythm with catastrophe. Why would they care about this slow celestial drift unless they knew it meant something more? Some researchers like Giorgio de Santillana and Herta von Dechend in Hamlet's Mill argued that myths of gods battling in the sky were symbolic descriptions of this precessional motion. The tilt of heaven, the fall of the axis, the day when the sun rose in the wrong place, all metaphors for a world realigned by cosmic forces. To the ancients, precession wasn't just a clock, it was the pulse of creation and destruction. Consider this: half a precessional cycle, 12,960 years, mirrors almost exactly the catastrophic interval revealed in ice cores, magnetic reversals, and solar patterns. Half a wobble, half a cosmic breath. If the full cycle is the inhale and exhale of the heavens, then the midpoint, 12,000 to 13,000 years, may be the turning point where balance collapses and the world renews itself through fire and flood. Could the ancients have built their monuments to mark that midpoint, the moment when the celestial clock resets? The evidence is overwhelming. At Giza, the alignment of the three pyramids mirrors the belt of Orion as it appeared 12,500 years ago. At Angkor Wat, in Cambodia, the towers align with Draco and Cygnus, constellations marking the celestial pole during the same epoch. And at Teotihuacan in Mexico, the layout of the Avenue of the Dead forms a geometric map of the solar system, frozen in time to that very same ancient sky. 3 civilizations, 3 continents, 1 alignment, 1 epoch, the last cataclysm. It's as though someone, or something, wanted to preserve the coordinates of the last reset, perhaps as a warning to those who would live at the next one. And now, as the precessional wheel turns again, the Earth's axis points almost exactly opposite that ancient orientation. We are at the mirror point. The same celestial configuration that marked the last disaster is returning. In myth, this moment was known by many names: the Kali Yuga's end, the fifth sun's twilight, the age of Aquarius dawn. Not the end of time, but the renewal, when the heavens realign and the old world gives way to the new. To the ancients, it was both terror and transcendence. Destruction, yes, but also rebirth. Why encode this knowledge in stone, in myth, in number? Because calendars fade, empires fall, but geometry endures. And when language itself is lost, the ratios remain. The blueprints of the gods were not temples or tombs, they were data, architectural equations linking earth to sky, matter to motion, human life to cosmic time. To us, they are ruins. To them, they were instructions. But there is one more layer to this mystery, one that bridges myth and astronomy, the sacred belief that when the heavens complete their turn, something descends, a force, a being, or a consciousness, returning with the end of each age to guide the survivors into the next. Call it God, or call it a cycle of awakening. Either way, the ancients left us a countdown, and the clock, once again, is almost at zero. But if the precession was their warning system, where did they first learn it? To find that answer, we must look to the oldest sky of all, the one reflected not above but beneath, the heavens mirrored in stone, in myths of the serpent and the star. The serpent and the star, the cosmic blueprint, hidden across cultures. Before language, before kings, before history, there was the serpent. It coils through every myth on earth, from the deserts of Egypt to the jungles of the Amazon. It winds across temple walls, carved into stones thousands of miles apart. It slithers through the stars themselves, the Milky Way, the celestial river of light, known to the ancients as the great serpent of the sky. Why does this symbol appear everywhere? Because it is more than a creature. It is a code, one that unites heaven, earth, and catastrophe. To the Egyptians, the serpent was Apophis, the chaos dragon who attacked the sun each night, trying to devour the world. Every dawn, Ra's solar boat defeated it, rebirth after darkness. To the Maya, it was Kukulkan, the feathered serpent, descending the pyramid of Chichen Itza on equinox days, when the sun aligns perfectly with its steps, a living shadow marking time itself. To the Hindus, it was Ananta Shesha, the endless serpent upon which Vishnu rests, awaiting the moment when the universe dissolves and begins anew. And in Norse legend, it becomes Jörmungandr, the world serpent, whose movement around the earth heralds Ragnarok, the twilight of the gods. Everywhere, the serpent means the same thing, a cosmic cycle, destruction and renewal, the movement of heaven mirrored on earth. But what if the ancients weren't just using metaphor? What if they were describing an actual phenomenon, the magnetic field of our planet and its celestial counterpart, twisting and coiling like an invisible serpent between worlds? Modern physics describes Earth's magnetic field as a toroidal current, a double helix of plasma spiraling through space, remarkably similar to the ancient depictions of serpents with twin heads or intertwined bodies. To those who watched the skies thousands of years ago, the auroras of a disturbed magnetosphere would have looked exactly like glowing serpents of light, writhing across the heavens as the poles shifted and solar storms raged. The serpent in the sky was real. They saw it. They recorded it, and they remembered. Even more astonishing is how this symbol was used to map the heavens. In Mesoamerica, temples align with the Milky Way's galactic bulge, the very region where the serpent's head appears during precessional transitions. In Egypt, the Nile, long considered the earthly reflection of the Milky Way, curves in the same pattern, and at Angkor Wat, the entire temple complex is modeled after the constellation Draco, the dragon winding around the northern celestial pole, the pivot of the world's axis. This was not coincidence. It was design. The ancients saw the serpent as the spine of the cosmos, the channel through which energy, matter, and even consciousness flowed during the moments when worlds ended and began. In Sanskrit, that energy was Kundalini, the serpent rising from the earth's core to the crown of heaven. In alchemy, it became Ouroboros, the serpent swallowing its tail, symbol of eternal return. One life devoured by the next, one world feeding the birth of another. The serpent was also the measure of time itself. Its coils represented epochs. Its movement marked the precession of the equinoxes. And when the serpent straightened, when the magnetic field and solar currents aligned, catastrophe struck, and the cycle renewed. In temple after temple, this story repeats. At Chichen Itza, The serpent descends in light and shadow exactly on the equinox, the moment of cosmic balance before inversion. At Karnak in Egypt, the serpent-headed goddess Wadjet guards the temple axis that points to the star Sirius, which heralded the Nile's flood, another reset, another rebirth. And in the Andes, the temple of Amaru Muru, the gate of the serpent, faces a horizon point where the sun rises only once every 12,000 years. All across the earth, the geometry is the same, the symbolism identical, the timing precise. Different cultures, same code. The serpent and the star, the cosmic blueprint. If the ancients encoded this pattern, they must have known it wasn't random. They were tracking a celestial rhythm that governed life, death, and time itself. And maybe, just maybe, they understood that this serpent, this current of cosmic energy, returns. Now, in the 21st century, astronomers have discovered that our solar system moves through the galaxy in a helical path, spiraling like a serpent through the Milky Way's magnetic arms. Every 12,000 to 13,000 years, it crosses regions dense with plasma and cosmic radiation. When that happens, the sun flares, the field collapses, and the earth resets. The serpent awakens again. The ancients saw it. They named it. They feared it. And they built a map, one we are only now beginning to read. But the serpent's path was not the end of their knowledge. Somehow they also knew when the next strike would come. Not just approximately, but precisely. Hidden in their calendars lies the countdown. The countdown, calendars of fire and flood. Every civilization that ever looked to the stars built a calendar, not just to mark seasons, but to survive them. Beneath the cycles of harvest and moonlight, they all measured something greater, something cosmic. Because time to the ancients was never linear. It was a circle, a wheel of creation and destruction, turning endlessly through the heavens. And on that wheel, there was always a point where everything ended and began again. The Mayan clock. No calendar expresses this more hauntingly than the Mayan long count. To the Western world, it seemed to predict the end of time in 2012. But the Maya never spoke of the end. They spoke of transition. Each sun, they said, ends in fire, flood, or darkness. And the fifth, our own, would someday yield to the sixth. The long count's mathematics are astonishing. Its cycles, baktuns, each last 394.26 years, and 20 of them form a grand cycle of 7,885 years, nearly two-thirds of the Earth's catastrophic interval. Two such grand cycles equal roughly 15,570 years, close enough to the 12,000, 13,000-year pulse to raise eyebrows among researchers. Coincidence or calibration? Ancient Maya astronomers tracked Venus, the Sun, and the Milky Way's galactic center with unbelievable precision. They recorded the precession of the equinoxes centuries before the Greeks, and encoded in their monuments, like Palanca and Copan, the imagery of celestial alignment and flood. When the sun and the galactic center aligned at the solstice, they said the world tree would shake. That alignment happened in 2012, a beginning, not an end. The Vedic ages, half a world away, the Vedas of ancient India describe a cosmic chronology so vast it dwarfs history. They speak of yugas, 4 great ages cycling endlessly, Satya, Treta, Dvapara, and Kali. Each represents a descent from purity into chaos, and the full rotation of all 4 totals, 4,120,000 years. A symbolic number, yes, but one rooted in celestial proportion. Divide that by 360, and you get 12,000 divine years, a number eerily close to the physical cataclysmic cycle. To the rishis, this was not mere mythology. It was physics, the rhythmic breathing of the cosmos. When the sun moved through dark regions of space, they said, humanity forgot its divine origin. When it emerged into light again, consciousness was restored. A poetic way, perhaps, of describing what modern science calls the solar system's passage through the galaxy's electromagnetic arms, darkness and light, decline and renewal. The current age, according to some interpretations, began around 3102 BCE, roughly the dawn of recorded civilization. If the Vedic calendar measures cosmic precession, then the midpoint of the Kali Yuga, the peak of darkness, would occur around our own time. After that, the wheel turns once more toward rebirth, the Egyptian calendar. The Egyptians, too, measured something far older than dynasties. Their Sothic calendar was based on the rising of Sirius, the bright star whose heliacal rising signaled the annual flooding of the Nile. But every 1,160 years, the calendar realigned perfectly, a Sothic cycle. 17 such cycles equal approximately 24,120 years, nearly identical to the precessional period. In the Temple of Dendera, hieroglyphs depict circular zodiacs, wheels within wheels, marking epochs of fire and water. The priests of Heliopolis called these the Zep Tepi, or first times, each beginning after the Earth's renewal. Even more intriguing, the ancient Egyptian texts describe the sky falling and the sun reversing direction. To modern translators, poetic exaggeration. To the geophysicist, the language of magnetic reversal, the global pattern. Across continents, the calendars agree on one fundamental truth. The world moves through vast ages of destruction and renewal, and we are approaching the end of one such age. The Mayan fifth sun nears completion. The Kali Yuga reaches its turning point. The precessional wheel completes half a rotation since the last cataclysmic alignment. And the Earth's magnetic field shows signs of collapse once again. Different cultures, different mathematics, same countdown. It's as if humanity has been keeping time for a disaster we no longer remember. The ancients didn't count hours, they counted cataclysms. Their calendars were alarms set by civilizations that knew the cycle always returns. But here's the haunting twist. Some of them may have known exactly when. Carved into temples, encoded in numbers, there are hints of a specific astronomical alignment, the one that triggers the pulse. And according to several of those systems, that alignment doesn't belong to the distant future. It belongs to now. But before we confront what that means, we must ask, how did they know? How could people with no telescopes or satellites track cosmic cycles spanning millennia? The answer lies in something deeper than observation, in memory older than civilization itself. Echoes before the flood, memories older than history. There are memories that don't belong to us, yet live within us. They stir in dreams of endless water, of burning skies, of nights where stars fell like rain. We call them myths. But what if there's something more? Not inventions of imagination, but echoes of an event the species once endured. A trauma so vast it scarred not just culture, but consciousness itself. Modern neuroscience tells us that fear and memory shape not only individuals, but generations. Stress, disaster, survival, these leave imprints in our very DNA, chemical memories passed on through time. Could the human race carry ancestral recollections of cataclysms long forgotten by history? When you read the world's oldest stories, the pattern is unmistakable. Every culture begins with catastrophe, a flood, a fire, a darkness, a reset. The Sumerians spoke of Ziusudra, warned by the god Enki to build a vessel before the great waters rose. In the Hebrew scriptures, Noah receives the same command, to survive a flood that wipes away a corrupt world. The Greeks told of Deucalion and Pyrrha, who watched the mountains drown beneath the sea. In the Popol Vuh, the Maya described the gods destroying their own creation with water and sky fire. And in the myths of the Aboriginal Australians, the dream time ends when the sea swallowed the red plains and the sun turned black. These stories don't contradict each other. They harmonize, like different voices singing the same song from opposite sides of the planet. Archaeology supports them more than it dares to admit. Around 12,800 years ago, the Younger Dryas impact hypothesis marks a sudden flood of meltwater from the collapsing ice sheets. Sea levels rose hundreds of feet, submerging continental shelves that once held fertile plains. Entire coastlines vanished, and with them, the memories of worlds that preceded us. In recent decades, sonar scans have revealed traces of those lost lands. The Doggerland Plateau beneath the North Sea, where forests and villages once thrived. The Sonda Shelf in Southeast Asia, now a shallow sea that may have connected ancient cultures across Indonesia. And the Gulf of Khambhat off India, where stone structures lie buried beneath silt, carbon dated to more than 9,000 years ago, each one a drowned whisper of a civilization erased by water. Even cave art, our oldest visual language, seems to echo these cycles. In the depths of Lascaux and Chauvet, animal constellations adorn the walls, bulls, lions, and birds aligned with star clusters. New analysis shows they correspond not to the sky of their painter's time, but to constellations as they appeared 13,000 years ago. The artists were marking the sky, recording a celestial event. To them, it may have been a warning. To us, it is evidence. Genetic research adds another layer to this haunting continuity. Around the same epoch, human populations show a mysterious bottleneck, a drastic reduction in diversity, as if the species had nearly vanished. Survivors spread again from a few refuges, carrying fragments of culture and memory, and with them, the stories. That's why these tales of deluge and rebirth feel universal. They are not allegory. They are memory, passed through language, through genes, through ritual, the same way migratory birds remember routes they've never flown. Deep within us lies a memory of running from the sea, of watching the sun burn red, of losing everything and beginning again. Even the timeline fits. 12,000 years, the half-turn of the cosmic cycle, the same moment recorded in stone, in myth, and in ice, as if the entire species experienced something so vast that it carved itself into our collective soul. But if the flood was the last echo of destruction, then what happens when the cycle returns? Will humanity once again be reduced to legend, or have we this time become the very architects our ancestors dreamed of? The next cataclysm may not only test our survival, it may test our memory. Because what good is a warning if no one remembers how to read it? And what if the ancients found a way to make sure we would, by hiding it where no flood could reach, no fire could burn, no empire could erase? The hidden archives, where the ancients hid the truth. If the world has been destroyed before, then somewhere, someone must have tried to save what they could. Every flood has its ark, every cataclysm has its keepers, and perhaps, buried beneath the layers of forgotten centuries, lie the hidden archives, repositories of knowledge left by those who knew the cycle would return. From the Nile to the Andes, from the frozen poles to the deserts of Tibet, legends speak of libraries sealed beneath mountains, pyramids, and ice. They are said to contain records of civilizations erased from history, blueprints, star maps, and accounts of the days when the sky fell. The Hall of Records. The most famous of these is the Hall of Records, said to rest beneath the Great Sphinx of Giza. Egyptian priests told the Greek historian Herodotus that the Sphinx guarded a secret chamber built by the gods of Zep-Tepi, the first time. In the 20th century, American clairvoyant Edgar Cayce revived the legend, predicting that a vault of pre-dynastic knowledge would be discovered beneath the Sphinx's right paw, a record of Atlantis and its fall. Mainstream Egyptologists dismissed it as fantasy. Yet in the 1990s, seismic surveys conducted by researchers like Thomas Dobecki and John Anthony West detected anomalous cavities directly beneath the monument. Their shapes and depths suggested artificial construction. The Egyptian authorities sealed further investigation. No excavation was ever allowed. What lies beneath remains unknown. If the hall exists, it may have been sealed after the last cataclysm, a message entombed in stone, waiting for a future civilization capable of decoding it. And perhaps the very geometry of the Sphinx, half lion, half man, symbolizes the cycle itself. Leo and Aquarius, the two opposing signs of the precessional wheel, the beginning and the end, the caves of the Andes. Far to the west, deep beneath the Andes, another legend whispers of hidden vaults. In Ecuador, the Cueva de los Tallos, the cave of the oil birds, has long been rumored to contain metallic books, engraved with languages unknown. Local Shuar elders speak of guardians from the stars, who hid the records before the flood. When an expedition led by Neil Armstrong, the first man on the moon, visited the site in 1976, their official report described unusual precision in the cavern's architecture, as if natural stone had been carved into geometric symmetry. What they found, or didn't find, remains locked in classified archives. In Peru, similar stories surround Marcahuasi Plateau and Amaru Muru, said to be portals to the world before. These sites bear carvings that resemble melted architecture, as if once subjected to immense heat, perhaps the aftermath of the cataclysm itself. The polar vaults. At the opposite end of the Earth, the frozen wastes hold their own secrets. Satellite imagery of Antarctica has revealed structures buried beneath the ice, rectilinear anomalies stretching for miles, impossible to explain as natural formations. Scientists claim they're glacial formations, yet explorers and whistleblowers tell another story of ancient tunnels, colossal caverns, and what appear to be walls made of polished basalt. If true, this would place human architecture on a continent supposedly untouched for millions of years. Even in the modern age, the idea of seed vaults and data archives hidden beneath permafrost seems to echo the same instinct, to preserve knowledge against planetary disaster. Perhaps our ancestors did the same, long before us. The Asian repositories. In the Himalayas, Buddhist texts speak of Agartha, a hidden realm within the earth where enlightened beings preserve the wisdom of previous worlds. The Tibetan Shambhala myth describes subterranean chambers filled with luminous manuscripts, guarded by watchers who re-emerge at the dawn of each new age. For Western minds, these are metaphors, but for monks who guard the mountain monasteries, they are geography. And in India's Mahabharata, there are verses describing cities within the mountains, sealed by the gods until the next yuga. Even ancient Sanskrit itself was once said to be the language of the survivors, a code designed to preserve precise vibration long after scripts were lost. The pattern beneath the earth. What if all these legends, Egypt, Andes, Tibet, Antarctica, describe not separate myths, but nodes in a single planetary network? A network built by the survivors of the last cataclysm to ensure that knowledge could be recovered when the cycle began anew, a planetary arc system. It's possible that many of these sites are aligned to one another through geodesic coordinates, forming a global grid, the same geometry later mimicked by megalithic sites like Easter Island, Stonehenge, and Giza. If true, then this grid was more than spiritual. It was technological, a stabilization network, maybe even a planetary memory field, an ancient internet of stone. What might still be buried there, preserved in dry caverns or beneath polar ice, waiting for a civilization advanced enough or desperate enough to rediscover it? The Earth may have its own libraries, sealed by catastrophe, opened only by time. And if those vaults truly exist, they were built for one reason, because their creators knew this would happen again. But if the ancients preserved their truth in hidden archives, what happens when the modern world, deaf to myth, blind to pattern, stumbles into the same turning of the clock? The next blocks bring us home to now. The modern cycle, warnings from science. For centuries, myth and science stood on opposite sides of truth. One spoke in symbols, the other in equations. But now, their voices are beginning to merge. Because what our instruments measure today, the data from satellites, observatories, and magnetic sensors, mirrors precisely the events the ancients described. The Earth is changing again, and this time we can see it happening in real time. The magnetic shift. At the heart of the planet, the liquid iron core churns like a vast living engine. That motion generates our magnetic field, the invisible shield that deflects solar wind and cosmic radiation. But in the last century, something unprecedented has begun. The magnetic North Pole, once stable, is now sprinting across the Arctic at over 40 miles per year, an acceleration never before recorded. Simultaneously, the field's overall strength has dropped nearly 10% in 2 centuries, with localized regions, like the South Atlantic anomaly, weakening at twice that rate. Satellites passing through that zone routinely malfunction. Radiation levels spike. The magnetosphere is bleeding. Geophysicists warn that such rapid changes may precede a magnetic excursion, or even a full reversal when north and south switch places. The last major reversal, the Lachamp event, occurred about 42,000 years ago, coinciding with abrupt climate chaos, extinctions, and the disappearance of early human species. The cycle, once again, fits the rhythm. The solar awakening. Meanwhile, our star grows restless. Solar activity, once predictable in its 11-year rhythm, has become erratic. Flares and coronal mass ejections have intensified, and in 2025, scientists predict a solar maximum stronger than any in recorded history. During minor storms, auroras already reach latitudes unseen in centuries, glowing over cities like London and New York. It's beautiful and terrifying. In 2023, the Parker Solar Probe confirmed that the sun releases bursts of plasma filament larger than Earth itself, the same kind of discharge that could, in theory, trigger a micronova event. A single blast, if directed toward us, could collapse satellites, fry power grids, and ignite electromagnetic chaos worldwide. NASA calls such an occurrence a Carrington-class event. But what if the ancients had another name for it? The day the sky burned. The climate pulse. Even our planet's heartbeat, its climate, has begun to mirror the cycles of destruction and renewal. Paleoclimatologists examining ice cores from Greenland and Antarctica find abrupt spikes in temperature, greenhouse gases, and sea level every 12,000 to 13,000 years. The last one marks the Younger Dryas termination, when ice melted violently, oceans rose, and civilizations drowned. Now, as global temperatures climb and the cryosphere collapses again, we approach that same threshold. Some scientists attribute this purely to human influence, and indeed, we are accelerating the process. But the pattern predates industry. It is woven into the planet itself. Every few millennia, the system swings between extremes. The glaciers melt, the oceans flood, the skies darken, and the cycle resets. The cosmic connection. Even the wider cosmos echoes this rhythm. Astrophysicists have discovered that our solar system moves through plasma-dense regions of the galaxy approximately every 12,000 years, intervals marked by increased cosmic radiation. These encounters could amplify solar activity and destabilize Earth's magnetosphere, precisely the conditions that align with every geologic catastrophe on record. It's as though our system drifts through a galactic heartbeat, a rhythm that cares nothing for our calendars or empires. The signs around us: birds migrate off course, whales beach themselves by the hundreds, both guided by magnetic fields now in flux. Auroras descend farther south, lightning storms increase in intensity, and beneath our feet, seismographs record a subtle but undeniable rise in global tectonic activity. The crust is stirring. In 2019, the Schumann resonance, Earth's natural electromagnetic frequency, began to spike erratically, as though the planet's pulse were accelerating. No one knows why. To the ancients, it would have been simple. The Earth is remembering. The quiet before the pulse. We live in an age of satellites, data, and reason, yet the same patterns carved in ancient myth are flashing across our instruments. Solar fury, magnetic drift, melting ice, fire, flood, and trembling ground. And still, the world sleeps. distracted by its own noise, blind to the ticking of the oldest clock in creation. Perhaps the ancients weren't warning us about gods or punishment, but about physics, a recurring alignment between the sun, the earth, and the cosmos that resets the planet. They left us stories because stories survive when data is erased, and they left us monuments because stone survives when memory fades. The pulse is returning, but will we listen this time? Because if all signs point to the same convergence, solar, magnetic, geological, then the countdown is not prophecy, it's physics. And the next chapter has already begun. The silence before impact. What happens? When the clock strikes, every cycle ends the same way, with silence. It begins as a stillness that feels like peace. The winds calm. The magnetic field steadies, as if holding its breath. But to the instruments orbiting above, the readings tell another story. Deep beneath the calm, the pressure builds. The earth is winding up. When the clock strikes zero, everything that seems eternal turns fluid. The crust moves, the seas rise, and the sky, once blue and familiar, becomes electric. Stage 1. The magnetic collapse. At first, it's invisible. The poles begin to drift faster. 5 degrees in a year, then 10. Compasses falter. Birds migrate in spirals, confused. Navigation satellites lose orientation. Then, over days or weeks, the field fractures. The once solid magnetosphere splinters into regions of chaos. Auroras ignite across every latitude, rippling like serpents through the atmosphere. To the ancients, this would have looked like heaven itself burning. Without the magnetic shield, the Earth is suddenly naked before the sun. Radiation floods the upper atmosphere. Communications vanish. Power grids fail. Darkness spreads, not from night, but from silence. Stage 2. The solar trigger. Then comes the flash. A micronova, a solar explosion releasing plasma clouds the size of planets. Telescopes catch the first wave. Satellites melt seconds later. 8 minutes after the burst leaves the sun, it reaches Earth. The sky brightens to white. The ionosphere surges with current. Entire regions ignite spontaneously as electrical storms roar across continents. Lightning, continuous, blinding, strikes not from cloud to ground, but from ground to sky. The very air turns into plasma. The magnetic field collapses entirely. Compasses spin. The auroras fuse into a single sheet of fire stretching from pole to pole. And beneath that incandescent canopy, everything metal hums, vibrating with invisible current. Then comes the EMP. Circuits die. Satellites disintegrate. Cities fall silent. The modern world ends in a whisper, not a bang. Stage 3. The crustal shift. Without balance, the planet's rotation wobbles. The redistribution of mass, melted ice, rising seas, convective surges in the core pushes the lithosphere out of equilibrium. Then, as if nudged by an unseen hand, the entire crust slips. Continents groan, mountains fracture, oceans flee their basins, racing across land at hundreds of miles per hour. This is the moment remembered in every flood myth ever told, the instant when the sea devours the land. Earthquakes ripple across fault lines in perfect synchronization. Volcanoes awaken, belching ash and lightning into the blackened sky. The planet seems to scream, and in that scream, the human species is reduced to survival and memory. Stage 4. The atmospheric reset. Dust and vapor rise into the stratosphere, dimming the sun. For weeks, the world burns. Then comes the cold, an abrupt plunge as sunlight is blocked, plunging the planet into a temporary night. Rain falls as ash. Forests vanish in silence. From orbit, Earth looks veiled, gray, motionless, as though waiting to decide whether to live again. Stage 5. The dawn after months pass. The clouds thin. The sun returns, dim but present. The survivors crawl from mountains, caves, and high plateaus. They find a world rearranged, rivers where deserts once were, oceans in places that once held cities. Magnetic north lies somewhere new. The stars no longer match their maps, and civilization, as we knew it, is gone. They will tell stories of fire that fell, of water that rose, of gods who turned away. Their descendants will call it the flood, the purification, the judgment, the end. They will build monuments to remember, and in time they will forget, until the cycle begins again. The physics of prophecy. To the scientist, this is a chain of cause and effect. Solar eruption, magnetic reversal, crustal displacement, climate reset. To the philosopher, it is the pulse of creation, the cosmic breath that destroys to renew. And to the myth-maker, it is divine rhythm, the serpent consuming its tail once more. Every version is true. Each describes the same reality through a different language, and each warns the same truth. Nothing on earth is permanent, not even the sky. But maybe this time is different, because for the first time, we can see it coming. We have the technology, the knowledge, the memory, the very things the ancients tried to preserve. And perhaps that is the test, not whether we can stop the clock, but whether we can listen before it strikes. Because in the silence before impact, there is still time. But time, like the serpent, always moves in circles, and its next turn may already have begun. The survivors of tomorrow, rebuilding after the fall. The sky has cleared. The air, once charged with fire, now hums with silence. The pulse has passed, and out of the fractured earth, life stirs again. From the high mountains, the same refuges where myths say the first survivors once waited, small bands of humans emerge. Their faces are blackened by ash, their clothes little more than rags. Yet in their eyes burns something indestructible, memory. They remember the old world, even if its language has already begun to fade. The return to the wild civilization as we knew it is gone. The grids, the cities, the screens, all vanished beneath sediment and water. The world has returned to silence and instinct. For months, survivors live like shadows, scavenging, hiding, relearning fire. But then, slowly, something ancient awakens. The same impulse that built pyramids, that mapped the stars, that whispered of gods and time, the human need to remember. They begin to mark the sky again. At night they watch the new constellations, the ones rearranged by the planet's shifting axis. And they notice patterns, the new north, the rising of Sirius in a different season, the slow, steady wobble of a world reborn. It's all familiar and yet different, because deep inside, they know they have seen this before. The age of the storytellers. When food returns and fires burn steady, the survivors start to speak of what happened. They describe it to their children not as physics, but as story. The sky turned to fire. The sea swallowed the land. The gods grew angry and then forgave. In those words, truth becomes myth, the only form memory can take when writing and machines no longer exist. Within a few generations, myth hardens into scripture. The stories drift apart, shaped by isolation and geography. In one valley, the survivors will call it the Great Flood. In another, the purification by fire. Some will worship the sun as destroyer. Others will revere it as savior. And all will build new calendars, counting days not from creation but from catastrophe. This is how history begins again, and again, and again. The seeds of knowledge, but not everything was lost. Some fragments endure, etched into metal plates, buried deep within mountains, or encoded into crystalline structures that survived the heat. Others are genetic, instincts, intuitions, the inexplicable wisdom that humans carry without knowing why. How to track stars, how to build in proportion to the heavens, how to sense the coming of storms. In hidden vaults, perhaps beneath ice or under layers of volcanic glass, lie the last archives of the previous world. Books, drives, blueprints, even the digital echoes of our voices, waiting for a generation advanced enough to awaken them. When that time comes, the new humanity will rediscover the old and wonder who their ancestors were. They will see our machines and call them gods. They will rebuild in our image, and the cycle of reverence and curiosity will begin once more. The birth of a new myth. Thousands of years later, a child will stand beneath the stars and ask an elder, "Did the world ever end before?" And the elder will smile, the same way our ancestors did, and tell the story of the fire that came from the sky, of the serpent of light that crossed the heavens, of the few who hid in mountains and built again. And that story will grow into legend, into religion, into the foundation of the next civilization. They will build monuments to mark their gratitude and fear. Some will align them to the new magnetic north, some to the star that rose on the first day of the new dawn, and some, though they won't understand why, will face them toward the heavens, as if waiting for the gods to return. The great forgetting. In time, the memory of the cataclysm will fade. The children of survivors will know only what the stones tell them. The ancient digital ruins of our world will crumble, leaving only mystery. They will wonder how their ancestors could have reached such heights and why they vanished. They will call us the people before the flood, and someday one of them will look upon the ruins of our cities and ask, "Did they know this would happen?" And the wind, whispering through collapsed steel and glass, will answer softly, "Yes." The continuum, because that is the destiny of this planet. Not endless progress, but eternal rhythm. Each rise and fall feeds the next. Each age is both teacher and student of the one before. And through it all, humanity endures, reshaped, reimagined, reborn. Perhaps that's the real secret of the clock. It was never meant to be stopped. It was meant to remind us that creation itself depends on destruction. That memory is the seed of survival. We are the descendants of those who lived through fire and flood, and the survivors of tomorrow will be the same. The clock strikes, the world burns, the sky clears, and life begins again. But in this new dawn, one question lingers like smoke in the morning air. Is the cycle simply nature's rhythm, or the echo of something intelligent, watching from beyond the clock, waiting for its next turn to begin? The watchers beyond time, the intelligence. Behind the cycle, every pattern implies a purpose. Every rhythm suggests a conductor. And if Earth's cataclysms truly follow a clock, precise, mathematical, unwavering, then we must confront the question no scientist dares to ask aloud. Who built the clock? Or what? Throughout ancient history, there are whispers of beings who were not human, not gods, not spirits, but watchers, observers of the ages. In Mesopotamia, they were the Agigi, the ones who watched from above. In the Hebrew book of Enoch, they are the Grigori, angels who descended to teach humanity forbidden arts before the flood. The Egyptians called them the Shemsu Hor, the followers of Horus, who ruled before the pharaohs. The Andes tell of the Viracochas, pale, tall beings who came after the Great Fire to rebuild. And across the Pacific, the Polynesians spoke of the Aku Aku, the sky watchers who measured time by the stars. Different names, same description, same purpose. What if these weren't myths, but memories? Accounts of an intelligence that monitors the planet through its recurring destruction, not to rule, but to preserve a grand design. Perhaps they are the keepers of balance, ensuring that life, when it grows too powerful, resets itself, giving evolution and consciousness another chance. The architects of recurrence. The laws of physics are constant. Entropy, gravity, electromagnetism all obey symmetry. But what if, within that symmetry, there exists intention, a cosmic algorithm encoded into the fabric of space-time, one that resets worlds like seasons in a garden? To some, this sounds like theology. To others, it sounds like simulation. Could Earth be part of a vast experiment? One where civilization is allowed to bloom until it threatens the equilibrium of the system, and then it's rebooted? Physicists now speak of cosmological fine-tuning, the uncanny precision with which the universe's constants allow for life to exist at all. A fraction of a degree different, and the cosmos collapses into silence. Some interpret this as proof of design, others as the product of infinite cycles. But maybe those two ideas are not opposites. Maybe the designer is the cycle itself, the observers in the sky. Strangely, many ancient records place the watchers not in heaven metaphorically, but literally, among the stars. They came from Sirius, Orion, the Pleiades, the same constellations that align with ancient temples. To them, these were not just lights in the sky, but home. And when the world burned, the watchers returned, guiding the survivors, or perhaps recording the data of their failure. If such intelligence exists, it may not be biological at all. It could be ancient technology, self-sustaining probes or consciousness fields left behind by a civilization older than the solar system itself. We might call them gods. They might call us seedlings. Some theorists suggest that the cycles of destruction correspond to galactic synchronization waves, pulses of high-energy plasma moving through the Milky Way every 12,000 years. If an advanced intelligence were monitoring planetary systems, such waves would act as universal markers, triggering resets across worlds simultaneously. The Earth's forgotten clock could be part of that mechanism. The mythic paradox. What's remarkable is that ancient texts describe these beings not as destroyers, but as mourners. The watchers wept, says Enoch, when they saw humanity perish. In Sumerian tablets, the gods lament the flood they unleashed. The Aztec Codex Borgia depicts the gods tearing themselves apart to give birth to the next sun. Even the Vedic deities undergo death and rebirth with the universe itself. It's as if the intelligence behind the cycle suffers with its creation, bound to the same eternal recurrence. Maybe they aren't our masters or saviors. Maybe they're just caretakers trapped in the same loop, watching, waiting, remembering. Signals from the present. In our age, the watchers may no longer appear as angels or gods, but as anomalies, unidentified aerial phenomena that defy physics, artificial signals repeating from deep space at fixed intervals, mathematical constants appearing in quantum noise. Modern scientists call them coincidences. But what if they are pings from the architects of recurrence, checking the system before the next reset? The WOW signal, detected in 1977, lasted exactly 72 seconds, the number sacred to precessional geometry, dividing the great year of 25,120 by 360 degrees. Random, or a subtle signature, a cosmic watermark that says, "We are still watching." The covenant of cycles. Perhaps the most haunting thought is that these beings, or this intelligence, never left. It doesn't intervene directly. It simply watches as each civilization rises, self-destructs, and leaves behind traces for the next. The monuments, the myths, the numbers, all part of an ongoing conversation between epochs. And now the question is not whether they exist, but whether we are ready to become what they are. Because if intelligence survives through cycles, then eventually one civilization must awaken enough to see the whole pattern, to become the new watchers. We might already be on that path. We map the stars, we monitor the sun, we study magnetism, we preserve our knowledge in digital arcs buried beneath ice. We are preparing, even if unconsciously, for the day when the clock turns again. Perhaps this is what they did once, before they became the legends of our myths. We are the watchers of tomorrow. But if we are to inherit that role, we must understand what the cycle truly means, not only for Earth, but for consciousness itself. Because what if the reset is not punishment or fate, but initiation? The initiation, consciousness, through cataclysm. What if the cycle isn't punishment? What if it's the universe's way of waking us up? Every reset in Earth's history hasn't only erased life, it has elevated it. After every extinction, evolution leaps forward. New species, new forms, new intelligence. It's as though consciousness itself uses catastrophe as a forge, burning away what no longer serves, reshaping what remains into something greater. Fire as teacher, flood as baptism, darkness as womb. The ancients understood this. They didn't just fear the end, they worshipped it. To them, apocalypse wasn't death, but revelation. the literal meaning of the word, a tearing away of illusion, a return to truth. In the Egyptian Book of the Dead, the soul must pass through fire and water to be reassembled in light. In Hindu cosmology, the Mahapralaya, the Great Dissolution, destroys the universe only so Brahma may awaken again. In the Mayan Chilam Balam, each world ends when humanity forgets its divine origin and begins anew when memory returns. Even the Christian revelation, beneath its thunder and flame, ends not with eternal ruin, but with a new heaven and a new earth. Across every mythology, the message is identical. Destruction is not the opposite of creation. It's how creation breathes. The alchemy of destruction. In alchemy, there is a phrase, solve et coagula, dissolve and recombine. Break the form so that the essence may rise purified. The same law governs stars, civilizations, and souls. Our world, addicted to progress and permanence, has forgotten that truth. We fear collapse as failure, when it is, in fact, transformation. Each cataclysm, geological, solar, or spiritual, acts as the universe's reset button, clearing corruption so something more resilient can emerge. Perhaps that's why every survivor story, from Sumer to the Andes, ends with enlightenment. Ziusudra, Noah, Deucalion, they all ascend to new wisdom after the flood. They don't just survive, they awaken. The same may be true for us. The pressure we feel today, the accelerating chaos of climate, technology, and society, might be the early labor pains of a planetary rebirth. Not the end of the world, but the end of our version of it. The mirror within science searches for the cosmic mechanism behind these cycles, solar flares, magnetic reversals, galactic tides. But what if those are only the external reflection of something internal? What if consciousness and cosmos move together, each mirroring the other's transformation? The Earth flips its poles, the sun ignites anew, and within us, the poles of mind and heart reverse as well. What we believed solid dissolves, what we ignored becomes visible. It is as though humanity itself is being forced into its own awakening. Mystics across traditions have described this moment, the dark night of the soul, a stage where the self collapses, all illusions burn, and what remains is pure awareness. On the scale of a planet, a cataclysm might serve the same purpose, stripping away the illusions of permanence so consciousness can evolve. The pattern of ascension. Notice the symmetry. 12,000 years ago, ice and fire. 12,000 before that, flood and rebirth. Each cycle brings new intelligence, from stone to metal, from oral myth to writing, from belief to understanding, from superstition to science, and now, from knowledge to consciousness. Maybe the next reset won't just erase, it will activate. A leap not in technology, but in perception. A species forced to rediscover its place in the living cosmos. The watchers may not be entities in the sky, but aspects of our own higher mind, the parts of humanity that awaken at the brink of extinction, guiding the rebirth. Perhaps they are not observing us from above, but from within, waiting for us to remember that they have always been us. The fire of understanding. If that is true, then surviving the next cycle isn't just about shelter or technology. It's about consciousness, the ability to see beyond fear, beyond loss, beyond the illusion of separation, to recognize that the same energy that destroys also renews, that the serpent of time is not our enemy but our teacher. In the end, the cycle may not be trying to end us, it may be trying to graduate us. Each fall of civilization is an initiation into a higher state of being. Each apocalypse is an initiation ritual on a cosmic scale. And perhaps, only through these trials can consciousness evolve beyond the material, beyond the clock itself. When the ancients spoke of gods returning with fire, maybe they meant the awakening of divine awareness within mankind. The moment when we realize we are the architects and the observers, the created and the creators. The cataclysm, then, is not death. It is remembrance. But if this is initiation, if each cycle is a test, what lies beyond the final one? Is there an end to even the clock itself? To answer that, we must follow the pulse all the way to its source, beyond Earth, beyond stars, to the rhythm of creation itself. The cosmic pulse, the heartbeat of creation. At the center of every atom, there is rhythm. At the heart of every galaxy, there is rhythm. From the smallest particle to the largest structure in the universe, everything moves to the same invisible cadence: expansion, contraction, silence, and song. This is the cosmic pulse, the heartbeat of creation itself. It is not metaphor, it is physics, and perhaps it is consciousness, the breath of the universe. Modern cosmology tells us that the universe began with a single explosion, the Big Bang. But to the mystics of every age, creation was never a bang. It was a breath, a long exhalation of light, followed by an inhalation into darkness. Outward, inward, expansion, contraction, the same rhythm we find in stars, in planets, in lungs. Astrophysicists now theorize that even the Big Bang may not have been the first, that the cosmos undergoes infinite cycles of birth and collapse, known as the oscillating universe model. The ancient Hindus called this the day and night of Brahma. The Maya called it the breathing of the jaguar sun. And in Egypt, it was the pulse of Ra, the solar heart whose beat sustains existence. It is the same pattern everywhere, the same geometry, spirals, waves, toruses, the same ratio, the golden mean, F, and the same story, destruction, as prelude to creation. Galactic seasons. Just as Earth has years and ages, the galaxy itself may have seasons. Astronomers studying cosmic background radiation have found immense waves of energy, galactic shock fronts, moving through the Milky Way roughly every 12,000 years. When our solar system passes through one of these regions, cosmic rays intensify, solar activity surges, and planetary magnetic fields destabilize. The pulse we've traced from ice cores and myths might not be planetary at all. It might be galactic. Imagine it, a vast, luminous tide sweeping through space, invisible yet absolute, brushing against stars, igniting them, stirring their planets into chaos and renewal. A heartbeat so large it takes 12 millennia just to reach us. We are riding one of its waves right now. To a civilization that could perceive time as we perceive motion, these pulses would look like the breathing of the galaxy. Inhalation, exhalation, a living organism on a cosmic scale. The fractal of being physics reveals that the same equations govern atoms, storms, and galaxies. Spiral galaxies follow the same logarithmic ratios as hurricanes and nautilus shells. The structure of the cosmic web mirrors the neural networks in our own brains. It's as if consciousness and matter are woven from the same code, a fractal repeating endlessly at different scales. Perhaps this is why the ancients built fractal temples, why mandalas and labyrinths appear across cultures. They were reflections of the same truth, that reality is recursive, self-aware, breathing itself into form. We are not observers of the pulse. We are the pulse. When we study cosmic cycles, we are not looking outward. We are looking inward at the rhythm of our own consciousness mirrored across light years. The music of the spheres. Long before telescopes, Pythagoras spoke of the music of the spheres, the idea that planets and stars produce harmonic frequencies as they move. Today, astrophysicists can measure those frequencies, gravitational waves rippling through space-time like sound through air. Every black hole merger, every stellar collapse, every heartbeat of creation sings. And when those waves reach us, they stir the magnetosphere, the climate, even human emotion. It is all connected, one orchestra, one cosmic symphony. And perhaps every 12,000 years, the music crescendos, the tempo rises, the instruments clash, and in that dissonance, worlds are remade. The awareness behind the pulse. If there is a pattern, there must be awareness. Not necessarily a being, but a field, a conscious symmetry embedded in the universe itself. Quantum mechanics hints at it. Observation collapses probability into reality. In other words, the universe only becomes real when it becomes aware of itself. That awareness may be what we call God, or Source, or the architect. Not a distant ruler, but the pulse itself, the infinite feedback loop between matter and mind. It dreams in galaxies, it remembers in DNA, it speaks in light, and when civilizations rise and fall, when planets freeze and burn, the pulse continues, learning through its own creations. We are fragments of that learning, neurons in the cosmic brain. When the clock resets, it is not punishment. It is the pulse remembering itself anew, the infinite return. From the first vibration to the last, the universe dances between being and becoming, and in that dance lies every story ever told, the birth of stars, the fall of civilizations, the awakening of souls, each cycle a note, each life a rhythm, each apocalypse a breath. If the cosmic pulse is real, then even death, of stars, of worlds, of us, is only the exhalation before the next inhale. Creation never stops. It only pauses to listen. But if we are fragments of that pulse, if consciousness is the instrument of the universe itself, then one mystery remains. Can we learn to feel the rhythm before the next beat and choose how to dance when the pulse returns? The eternal return, the choice of the new dawn, a light that feels older than the sun. It spills over the new horizon, quiet, golden, almost shy, touching a world reborn yet haunted by the ashes of its own past. The storm has passed, the fire has cooled, and the silence hums with possibility. The clock has struck, and now it begins again. The memory of the fire. From the ruins, humanity rises, just as it always has. Barefoot children walk through valleys that were once cities. The sea glimmers over the bones of towers, and somewhere, a storyteller begins the oldest ritual in existence, remembrance. We were warned, they will say. The sky burned, the oceans rose, the earth turned over, but some of us survived. They will tell of the lights in the heavens, the voices in the storms, the serpents of fire that danced across the poles, and their listeners will ask, as they always do, why? And no one will answer, because the answer is not in words. It is in the rhythm of existence itself. The survivors may not know it, but they are continuing the legacy of every civilization that came before. They are not the end, they are the bridge, the carriers of the flame, the keepers of the pulse, the choice. But this time, something is different. For the first time in the long memory of the Earth, a species has understood the clock before it struck. We are that species. We know about the sun's cycles, the magnetic reversals, the cosmic pulse. We know what the ancients could only symbolize, and knowledge changes everything, because the purpose of knowledge is not to prevent the inevitable, it's to transcend it. When the next cycle comes, the question will not be, can we survive? It will be, can we awaken? To awaken means to remember that we are not separate from the pulse, but part of it. It means realizing that the end of an age is not the end of us. It is the next turn of our own becoming. The universe doesn't destroy, it transforms, and the same law applies to consciousness. The choice, then, is simple yet profound, to face the next dawn as victims of fate, or as co-creators of it, the new architects. Perhaps that is what the ancients hoped for, that one day their descendants would become the new architects of time, conscious of the cycle and capable of guiding it, rather than fearing it, not to escape destruction, but to use it, to harness its energy as fuel for evolution. A civilization that no longer hides its wisdom in stone, but weaves it into spirit. A species that remembers it is the Earth itself, dreaming in human form. Imagine that, a humanity that greets the solar flare not with terror, but with understanding, that builds not monuments of granite, but networks of awareness, that measures time not by clocks or stars, but by compassion, that recognizes every cycle as a heartbeat, the universe exhaling and inhaling through us. If such awakening occurs, then for the first time, the clock will not reset in ignorance. It will continue in consciousness. And perhaps then, the serpent will no longer devour its tail. It will lift its head toward the light. The eternal return. The pulse will come again. It always does, but it need not bring extinction. The end is only tragedy to those who forget the pattern. To those who remember, it is ceremony, the ritual of renewal. The universe does not repeat out of cruelty. It repeats out of love, the love of perfection through infinite variation. Every cycle is a lesson, every fall, a chance to rise higher. And so the earth turns, and the sun waits, and somewhere in the void between stars, the watchers, whether gods, ancestors, or the universe itself, lean closer. They do not judge. They only ask, will you remember this time? The dawn brightens. A new age begins, and with it, the oldest truth of all. Everything that was will be again. Everything that dies will live again. The end is the beginning, and the pulse never stops. Then, silence. A single heartbeat, and the whisper of a new world breathing for the first time. The cycle of cataclysms, Earth's forgotten clock, has struck once more.